What's up, B?
Good,
All
baby.
right. All right. Welcome to the Burnt Ships podcast post game Super Bowl extravaganza. Turns out the halftime show was more interesting to the game, but we're still going to break it down for you. The Eagles won. It wasn't even close to the score. Suggested 40-22. We're going to get into what went wrong for Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, what went right for the Eagles. Is Vic Fangio underrated? We're going to get into all of it, and we're also going to cover the halftime performance. What do people think, et cetera, et cetera. So, to help us do that, we brought back a returning champion, Brian Leverette from Virginia Tech, also a coach and referee, repping the Steelers today. He repped Virginia Tech last time, and so let's go over what we got right first and expand on that. So, what did we get right? Brian confirmed that the Eagles' defense was strong enough to win the game and be the reason that the Eagles won. That turned out okay, right? So that's one that we got right. So ding there. Um, Gary and I both picked the Eagles. We were right on that. So check box there. I identified sleepers or X factors, Cooper DeJean on the Eagles side and Xavier Worthy on the Chiefs side. The only wide receiver to really do anything that mattered in the game, to be honest. So if you guys made some money listening to us, you're welcome. All we ask is for a like, a comment, and a subscribe. We don't need a cut of the funds this time, but you know. Those were the key things that we got right. So first off and foremost, I think we need to talk about what did the Eagles defense do right to frustrate the highly rated and much esteemed. They're talking about them as if they were goats, Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, but clearly the Eagles did something that put that pause on that goat discussion. So Brian, what do you feel like the Eagles defense did right? Break down their coverage. In fact, they didn't even have to blitz to get the level of pressure they did. Let us know from an insider point of view what you thought about the game plan.
Hey, man, like anytime you can rush four and get to the quarterback, your job as a defensive coordinator becomes, I won't say easier, but I will say you can be a lot more creative on the back end, and there's a lot less risk unless the offense gets you out of that front and makes you, change, bring pressure because your front four, yeah, they're great at pressure, but if you're running and there's only four people and I'm blocking with seven, at some point you're gonna have to change your defense.
Right.
And the fact that the Eagles can do that with that defensive line and still be strong inside against the run, that's a monumental advantage for the defense.
Yeah. Um, I think that you had mentioned that the linebackers could potentially be a liability, and it looked like Vic Fangio decided to have them in passing situations cover the flats to kind of mitigate that check down read, and then either wait on the pressure or rely on some of his defensive backs to cover and make the throws really tough downfield. So, did you notice anything where maybe there were some open receivers that Mahomes missed, or did it
Yeah.
just like that was a good? Okay.
No, no, definitely. But the thing is, like the liability in inside coverage with your secondary and your linebackers is predicated on, you know, A, having time to throw, and B, being in a position where you have to play man. So I mean, if they're playing zone the majority of the game, I mean, what they're just sitting there looking at you. So in
Right.
order to get them off of those spots, um, you'd have to run play action to make the linebackers come up, make the safeties come up. But play action doesn't matter if you can't run. No one's caring about play action if you got 50 yards rushing in the game.
It didn't seem like they ran as much as I expected them to, just to set up the play action. How did you see the play calling from Andy Reid relative to the defense? Because it didn't look like he forced adjustments in ways that he potentially could have. So was the Eagles defense just so good that Andy Reid was like, why bother? Or do you think he left some meat on the bone as a play caller?
Oh, he definitely left meat on the bone. I think like that first drive was script. I mean, you only use script like your first 15 plays, like you script those, and you notice like that first drive was relatively effective until they had the drops. But after that, I think it was like I don't know. I want to call it arrogance. Maybe it was just you're going what you think you can do best, but going up against that front with with one tight end and three wide receivers
Mm-hmm.
with very little chip protection, very little max protect, like you're putting your back out, on free release, like that's not going to get it done. And I didn't see him change. I went back and watched the first half. Thankfully, NFL Network will replay the game, kind of a cut, play to play, so you skip all the commercials and all that stuff. And I only counted one time where they went double tight, and in the first half or in the first quarter when the game actually mattered, and I believe that was when they were backed up in their own goal line. So, I mean, that's something you could help if, like I said, at least if you do like I'll say the Bills, the Ravens definitely like they're really good at like utilizing their same play calling and offense while using an extra lineman,
Mm-hmm.
putting like a big tight end in the backfield for more protection. But I'm not going to fault Andy Reid for that because if the Chiefs don't practice that, that's your game plan going into the season. I mean, it's very hard to implement that within a 2 week game prep. So, but they do run two tights. They do run multiple tight ends, and like last season, that was like they ran it the most in the NFL. So the fact that they didn't do that in this game when they clearly needed it, I don't know why,
Right.
but it didn't happen, and they could have used that help.
Yeah. So typically, what the conventional wisdom is, and maybe you can provide some insight here. If the pass rush ends up being a problem for an offense, a lot of times a play caller will mix in more screens, draws, QB bootlegs, just to try to make it a more complex approach for the front four.
Right.
So you're not necessarily just pinning your ears back and heading towards a quarterback. Did you see any attempt for Andy Reid to mix that in at all? Because for
I
my
saw a couple.
enough of it.
It wasn't enough of it. I saw a couple, but again, that goes back to if you don't run the ball,
Right.
then the screen game is harder to execute. Now, a bootleg can always work. You can slide protection on one end, chip with a back or a tight end bootleg to the other. That that always works.
Mm-hmm.
Unless they blitz. I'll say the only way to beat that is if you blitz them out of it, because you're gonna have 6-on-4, and if you can't block 6-on-4, then you might as well just throw in the towel and go back to Bourbon Street.
Did you see any opportunities last kind of play calling? Because I think for a lot of people who have been watching Andy Reid's career and his ability to play caller, kind of underwhelmed with his game plan and his call sheet. Um, do you feel like they should have attempted at least some kind of sweep with Xavier Worthy, knowing his
Yes.
and knowing what a? Because I didn't see any sweep plays called with any consistency. Did you see any sweeps in your film review or anything like that?
No, I didn't see. I saw them do the jet motion, and they
Mm-hmm.
were kind of using that to try to influence the outside linebackers and widen them out.
Mm-hmm.
But they never followed through with it, and they didn't run off of it. So like everything was Mahomes. The majority of the play calling was Mahomes, dropping back 3 steps and hoping and praying that the rush doesn't get to him before he can get the ball off. I mean, that's what I saw.
Okay. So one last question before we let Homer Gary take some victory laps here. Uh,
It's coming.
if
I'm surprised you're not on horseback, Gary.
if, if you were to
Punching a horse. We punch horses after Super Bowls here.
punch horses, throw snowballs at Santa Claus, boo McNabb on draft day. Philly's got it.
Batteries.
So Brian, one last question, and then we'll let Gary bask in the Philly glory here. What percentage of the failure would you assign to the execution of the players, and what percentage would you assign to the
That's
coach?
a great question. Yeah, that's a great
Yeah,
question.
what percentage, given your look at it, your film analysis, everything else, how would you break up the blame pie for them?
Yeah, I'd say it's 50-50. Like because the opportunities that were available, there were key opportunities where either Mahomes ditched it in the dirt or threw a pick, or Kelce dropped it, or D-Hop dropped it, or lineman whiffed on attack on a block where they actually had the protection scheme decent. So I think it's enough playing to go around. But to your point, putting the players in that position when they have shown the opportunity, they have shown in the past of mitigating that kind of rush, well, maybe not that kind of rush, but mitigating strong pass rushes with personnel groupings. I'm surprised that there wasn't more of it.
Yeah, I was personally disappointed at Reid's. Well, honestly, the whole KC staff, I feel like they didn't use their 2 weeks in the best way, and I felt like they weren't prepared enough to make adjustments.
Yes,
both sides of the ball. I think that in our pregame breakdown, we identified some things that seemed pretty obvious that they didn't even attempt to do. And again, not saying that we're NFL level coaches, but just lifelong fans and people who study film and watch a lot of analysis. It seemed like they left sweeps on and we're not even going to get into the KC defense. We're going to let Gary take his victory lap first. So Gary, from a Philly fan standpoint, what do you think was the biggest reason that the Eagles won? Are you going defense, or are you going with the MVP that you predicted, Jalen Hurts, overperforming against zone blitz, etc.?
Yeah, I think. I mean, they put 40 points on the board, so I kind of think it's 50-50. I think it's both. I don't think it's one or the other. I'll
pick one. If you had to pick one, who are you going with? Are you going with Jalen Hurts overperforming when the game plan was designed to shut down Saquon, or are you going?
I mean, yeah, that's the obvious choice is that he did that, right? Like, I mean, they gambled. They got what they wanted. They were like, Saquon's not gonna, go off on us.
Yeah.
And they were like, yeah, you beat us, Jalen Hurts. And Jalen was like, okay, so I mean, that happened. And also, the defense, up until those gimme touchdowns in the last quarter, like they were just, I mean, I think that defense will rank in the top. But if I had to pick, I'll just say offense. I'll go with the offense because of Jalen Hurts.
Right.
But it's really, to me, it's 50-50. And I think, Brian, you mentioned, they just couldn't get off like on offense. And I think one of the things that I was noticing is that that's true, but it's also give credit where credit is due. Not that you weren't doing that, but like a big reason why they weren't able to make some of the, and those catches and Mahomes was just off kilter the whole game was because of that defense. And I think the biggest thing the defense did, and I think the biggest thing Fangio did, was they didn't really change much. They just sort of danced with the girl that brung them, because he has the superior line at the end of the day, and we saw that in play. Like they were over the O-line was overmatched, and I think they had no answers for that. And once they couldn't do what I think the reason they didn't do sweeps and they didn't do any short passing really was because they couldn't. And then once that was off the table, it looked like Andy Reid of old, right? Like without a running game. And I think that they suffered because of that. So I think that was my one, the thing that I noticed at halftime was we're very Philly fans. We feel very put upon by the national press, particularly over the past few weeks.
Yeah.
And I was noticing it. I mean, I honestly haven't followed it as much. I was aware of a lot of the commentary around Jalen Hurts historically and then more recently, but it was really apparent to me in the halftime. That was one sort of takeaway that I walked away with, was that the entire commentary was about wasn't about how good the defense was playing. It was about, well, KC, they're going to come back. They could do this. Like every person to a man kept talking about a KC comeback, and nobody really gave flowers to the defense and talked about what they were doing. it was all about like, well, they've been in this spot before, they could come, and it just felt like, so it was a fun night, man. I think the whole city is just overjoyed.
Definitely.
I woke up early and was on Blue Sky. I'm not on the
On Twitter.
formerly known as Twitter anymore.
We call it Twitter. Nobody calls it
Yeah,
it
I'm doing that,
except
bro.
nobody.
But I was my one of my, last point was my one of my favorite posts was this person who had transcribed all of the radio blotter from the night before, or a lot of it, and it was just like hilarious hearing some of the chatter on the police scanners. It's like, oh, there's about 5,000 people headed your way right now around the corner. Good luck. Just like the barricades are down. The barricades are down. So
Yeah.
I was telling Nana before you popped on, like, the biggest thing for me as a relatively new fan was I just enjoyed seeing my friends and people here in Philly, just people that have been lifelong fans. And you all know as sports fans, when a team that you grow up rooting for, particularly the sort of hard scrabble fan base, blue collar that Philly is, it's a nice feeling for the city. So I'm looking forward to the parade on Friday. I'm gonna take my kids.
Yeah.
School has been canceled,
Okay.
and,
Okay.
our mayor spelled, NFL champions correctly, so we're happy about that. That was another little
There you
clip
go.
viral,
Big.
everybody she spelled it for those who weren't aware, she spelled it, Elgses, Elgses, like 2 weeks ago, and everybody was making fun of us, so
Nice.
the last laugh's on us.
I mean,
The laughs on you, I mean.
let's be honest. Nobody looks at the Philly fan base as highly educated.
Oh, how dare you? How dare you now?
I'm just saying, y'all needed a jail in your stadium. We've been
Oh
over.
my gosh.
Oh
We've
my
been
All right,
over.
Southie in Boston, have you been to Dorchester? Okay, let's talk. See, now
Foxborough?
we're shit talking Sydney. We're gonna
Was there a
we're
jail in
gonna cause a race
Foxborough?
war. This is like,
Remind me, was there a jail in Foxborough? Were we booing our first round draft picks? We got a little more classy, y'all. I'm sorry. But all right, all jokes aside, I think we do need to talk about, because there was just a whole lot of disappointment for as much as I would like to give Philly credit. I think Jalen Hurts overperformed relative to what the expectations were. I think the film on him and the conventional wisdom on him was, if you zone blitz him, he's going to fall apart. During the regular season, he was rated one of the worst quarterbacks against the zone blitz.
Yeah.
But what you noticed, and I, part of having 2 weeks to prep for a game is there's an element of self scouting. Like, how are they going to attack us? And it is clear that what the Eagles spent time on was, how are we going to counter zone blitz? Who's going to pick up the free rusher? I saw a lot of good pickups from the running backs, in particular Barkley.
Yep.
Shout out to him, even though he knew that the game plan was to stop him. He still remained engaged in pass pro and picked up a lot of key blitzing players. And so for anybody who wants to go back on that film, even though he might not have had the amazing running game that I predicted, so yeah, I was wrong there. He had a great game in pass protection, blitz pickup, and being an outlet. He found a way to get open, be a good check down, but also pick up the free blitzers and give Jalen time to make throws down the field. I thought that the Eagles used their 2 weeks much better than the Chiefs did, which was surprising to me, because I think the conventional wisdom going in was the Eagles were more talented player for player, but the Chiefs had the more talented coaching staff. And so to get into that, because Brian, you've coached, I think both sides of the ball, right? And you've been around legendary coaches like Frank Beamer, so you know what good coaching looks like. My question for you is, why do you think Andy Reid, and to a much, much lesser extent, but still, I have to be objective here and say Spags didn't have some of the wrinkles that we predicted they would? What is it that you think they saw on film to make them go away from Xavier Worthy sweeps or the McDuffie on Smith and then double team AJ Brown instead of rolling the dice on that one. What is it do you think was going on in the building when they watched film and didn't even spend a few days to make sure they had those packages ready? What do you think the thought process was going on? What is it that you think they saw that they prioritized over what we talked about pretty much being layup options?
Well, I mean, the only thing I can imagine is that they were overcome by events because if you, I mean, for the blowout that it was,
Right.
I mean, it was a one possession game going deep into the second quarter. And
Yes.
basically there was like a 3 or 4 play span that blew the game open.
Right.
And you can't coach that. I can't game plan that my quarterback's going to throw an interception when he should have thrown the ball away.
Right.
I can't game plan that.
Yeah.
You know, I can't game plan, when I get a stop and there's a pass interference, unnecessary roughness call that isn't an unnecessary roughness call of a key point where it continues to drive. Like granted, you can adjust to those things. But I think from looking at it, they underestimated how good, like the order of magnitude difference between their line, their offensive line and Philly's defensive line.
That's
So
right. That's
right.
I think that's part of it.
Which to me, that's why, and I have much respect for the Chiefs coaching staff and how they build the program in general. But I think here, growing up as a New England fan, you always had a game plan to stop the stars and account for the stars. And hey, they're really good here. What are we going to do if this? So if going in as a coaching staff that you have Joe Tooney playing out of position at left tackle because
Yes.
combination of injuries and the draft pick underperforming in Kingsley Suamataia, who a lot of people thought would solidify the left tackle line. Essentially,
And he may still.
Right. And also, to be fair, nowadays, because of all of the limitations of practice time, it now takes 2 to 3 years to get an offensive lineman truly up to NFL competitiveness. Whereas I think, in past years where you were allowed to hit more in the offseason, linemen were able to get up to speed better and contribute as rookies. Now it's only elite talents that really skip that. And so this isn't to criticize Kingsley Suamataia as a rookie, but I'm saying that as a coach, if you have somebody who hasn't been a tackle since college, right? He was a guard in New England. He's been a guard in Kansas City. He's playing left tackle, and he was your best guard, and he was your left guard. And now you have a guy who's starting at left guard that isn't the strongest, and he was one of the people who gave up a lot of pressures. I just felt like they didn't have enough protections and schemes to take the pressure off their offensive line. And yes, again, I know normally rushing for you should be able to have 5 people handle it. But as I said in our pregame, this was the best defensive line in the NFL. And you have more contingencies, more wrinkles, more trick plays specifically designed to, if it goes sideways. And so to give you an example, and again, as a Patriots fan, here it comes. But we were down 2 touchdowns twice against the Ravens. Things were just not going our way. And McDaniels dusts off a double pass where essentially Brady throws the ball to Edelman. Everybody sucked up trying to tackle Edelman, thinking it's going to be a sweep or a running play. And Edelman throws the ball down the field to an open Amendola, right? So a double pass there. I didn't see the level of trick plays. I didn't see the level of they even had scenarios where the running backs were up on the line and reporting as ineligible and line were reporting as eligible. And it was just throwing off the Ravens defense. They were like, I don't know who to cover because my eyes see a running back and I'm supposed to hit him, but he's ineligible. but do I
You mean
cover this
cheating?
guy? You get what I'm saying? I don't think there was a
No, I see that all the time. Like all the Pee Wee teams and
yeah.
they run that middle school. They run that like routinely.
Yeah, where were the trick
Drives
plays?
me nuts.
Where were the contingencies here to really throw off the? I felt like they never forced an adjustment out of the Eagles. It reminds me of when McVay only scored 3 points against us during the last Super Bowl. It was like Patriots ran quarters coverage. Everybody knew it was quarters coverage, and McVay was like, "We gonna do what we do."
And
Uh,
Robert Woods dropped 2 touchdown passes. I
and
mean,
I
my bad. It was just one. My bad.
right, no, I
My guy.
and I get it. Like, you know what I'm saying? I completely agree that there were some drops in that game, but my point is, because one of those was a crazy McCourty breakup. But like I don't think it was fair to expect Cooks to catch that when McCourty just
Yeah, Cooks. No. Woods was the other one though. That was like he
right,
just dropped
right.
that. Yeah.
So I say that to say Andy Reid is one of the greatest offensive minds in the game, and I didn't see what looked to me like a solid trick play like that. I didn't, and I didn't see anything creative with Worthy trying to get Worthy open. You know what I mean? Like I've seen it where it's a reverse. Like they didn't even try a reverse with Worthy. Like all that speed, and you don't have any particular play calls designed to make the defense think a little and slow them down. It seemed like they just played straight up pass.
Yep.
They didn't run much. They pretty much abandoned the run.
Well, I mean, you tend to do that when you're down 24-0.
But I think even in the first half, it didn't seem like they were running as much as they could have.
No. Don't. Yeah. Now that part is, I agree with. Like for whatever reason, just hey, it may be a 3 and out here and there, but
Yeah.
I got to set it up. Go ahead.
I think for me, like there are a couple of more immediate things. I agree with both of what you're saying, but the two main things that stuck out for me in that regard are to your point about facing the best defensive line that you've faced all season, right? And I think it's sort of like the Mike Tyson quote, like you can game plan and prepare all you want until you get punched in the fucking mouth, right? So like I think there's an element of that, and it's sort of like in boxing or UFC, like you can spar and you can bring in people to simulate what you're going to face,
Right.
but you can't. Your practice squad is never going to be able to actually simulate that line and that team. And I think that's for me a primary thing that was happening. And then the second thing that stood out to me, which I thought was sort of a rookie move on the coaching staffs, and maybe it wasn't the coaching staff, maybe it was their PR, but I think all of this talk about three-peat, there was it was sort of like, I think a savvy team would have kept that quiet. Like all this chatter about like, oh, we're in talks with Pat Riley to get the three-peat. We're gonna do like I just think that's a very rookie PR move for a team to make to give anytime you can mitigate bulletin board stuff for the other team, do it. And they didn't do that. And I think
Yeah.
and we're seeing now like the Eagles are like, yeah, we were pissed. Like how dare you disrespect us? So I'm not saying that was like the main reason, but I think those kinds of things at the end of the day, like
Yeah.
sports is about heart and emotion. And like, if I can avoid giving somebody some extra, any little extra ounce of motivation, it's not that I'm scared, but I'm like just being strategic in the way that I talk about things in the media. So I think that
Yeah.
was another aspect of things that stood out to me.
Yeah, I'd say one more personnel weakness, and then maybe we can do a halftime like we did for pregame. Kelce, everybody knows that he's more of a receiving tight end than a blocker. Like, let's just be honest. Nobody wants if he is all that stands between Mahomes getting sacked by a defensive end, then Mahomes is either going to have to run for his life or he's going to have to cover up. It just is what it is. Nobody has ever thought of Kelce as a blocker. So I think the problem was when Kelce is one of your tight ends and you can't rely on him as a blocker, you are expecting him to be a reliable outlet. And he dropped, in my opinion, he struggled in this game. I thought he dropped too many balls. And I also thought that on plays where he was chipping or whatever, he didn't raise his game to like a Gronk level. Like, the thing about Gronk, and I know people kind of debate, when it comes to greatest of tight ends. Like, is Kelce better than Gronk or Gronk better than Kelce? The thing that you have to give Gronk is Gronk could take a defensive end one-on-one and knock him on his ass um, if he needed to. Apologies for the language. But essentially, if that was the assignment, he would do that just as much as he would bully somebody to get open and then try to break tackles. I think the issue with Kelce, and I say this respectfully, he's a great receiving tight end. I never felt like he's had a game as a blocker or as a normally I don't block, but my team needs me. I got to put on the chin strap and get under this dude. Not even a cut with some bass in his voice. You know what I'm saying? Because some guys that don't want the full contact, they kind of do the cut block to slow him down, where the defender has to jump a little bit. He wasn't even doing that, and so I think Kelce in particular underperformed in a place where they really needed him, and typically he does step it up as a receiver. This game, he was pretty quiet. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I agree with that, but I think we're getting a little hyperbolic here.
Mm-hmm.
No, the Eagles aren't this Eagles ain't the 85 Bears. They're not the 2000 Bears.
No.
I'm just saying. So I think it's one of those things. Like, I'll give you like when the Steelers lost to the Browns in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. Like, that game was over in the first 3 drives. Like, a couple of mistakes, safety, touchdown, mm-hmm. interception. It was 3 scores down before you could look at it, and after that, like, it's over.
Yeah. So if I have to say something positive about the Chiefs, because I feel like we've been going in on them.
I'm saying, dude, I'm like, because to your point with Kelce, he's like, okay, yeah, he's not a road grader, but the Chiefs don't really run the ball. Now, last year they did, and he wasn't a liability in the run game. But if you go out there and your quarterback has as much rushing yards as all 3 of your other running backs combined, obviously running wasn't a priority.
Right.
He hasn't been all season.
Right.
It's in the Mahomes show.
Right. I think that Andy Reid probably had his worst game as a play caller in a big game that I've seen in a while.
Right. I won't even go that far, because I'm like, literally, first. So wait a minute. So you're down 7-0. Your defense picks the ball off in the red zone.
Yeah.
You get your 3 now. You got your ball, and your quarterback throws a pick. That's not play calling. You can't put that on the coach.
I agree.
And he did what he did. What we were talking about doing. He got Mahomes on the edge.
Right.
And Mahomes made a bad decision. That's not play calling.
I agree.
And he threw a pick. So they were on a scoring drive. Then the next play, the quarterback throws a pick 6. So, like, what do you like, dude?
So all of that is fair. I'm not saying that Andy Reid was the sole reason they lost. I think it was a team effort. It's always a team effort when you lose by 18. But where I was going with this in terms of positivity is that no matter what you say about the underperformance, some of the questionable decisions, some of the lack of adjustments, all of which are valid criticisms, all of the lack of preparation, the lack of discipline in terms of the multiple offsides calls in cases where it extended drives where it didn't need to. Some of that is on coaching. Like, you gotta manipulate that. It's gonna be loud. It's the friggin' Super Bowl. You know what you can't do? Give a motherfucker a free first down off an offsides call. Like,
yes. I agree.
All that said, what I will give the Chiefs is they showed a lot of heart in not quitting in the fourth quarter. They finally remembered that they had Xavier Worthy, and they finally started throwing him some touchdowns, right? So I'm not saying that I needed to be on that staff, but what I am saying is they finally realized what I saw before the damn game even started in terms of Xavier Worthy is a matchup nightmare if deployed responsibly. I'm not saying that the Eagles probably were starting to skew a little more prevent, but that's the type of thing that Worthy is going to feast off of, because if you're not tight up on him and he's got a lot of room with his speed, 4-2 is very hard to simulate if you don't have a 4-2 guy on your practice squad or that'll play scout team. And that 4-2 is very tough to tackle. And if you're in prevent and you're just not lining up correctly and breaking down, it just is what it is. So I give them credit for not quitting. I give them credit for rallying, getting the 22 points. I think it was 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter, right?
Yeah.
So I give them credit because we've seen what happens when a quarterback and a team quits, namely Peyton Manning quitting against the Seahawks at halftime and just kind of mailing it in and losing 43-8. That wasn't this. The Chiefs still showed pride. The Chiefs still tried to compete under bad circumstances. I just don't think they showed enough creativity from an offensive play calling standpoint. And I do think they could have made some slight adjustments on defense in terms of at least a few times try to double A.J. Brown. And
Dude, A.J. Brown had 3 catches, bro. Why you on A.J. Brown like that? The person who scored the first touchdown, wait a minute, hold on. When the game was in the balance, who scored the first touchdown? Who scored the touchdown?
Devontae Smith, right? Devontae Smith?
Jahan Dotson, bro.
Oh, that's right, Dotson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're going to tell me A.J. Brown, so when the game's in the balance, hold on, game's in the balance.
No,
A.J. Brown doesn't score. Dotson doesn't score. Devontae Smith doesn't score. Goddard got you a big catch. And Dotson got you a big catch. You get a pick. You get a turnover on downs. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, the way the game played out is just the way the game played out.
So
I'm not saying the Chiefs would have won. I'm just saying, like, it could have been a lot closer.
So where I was going with that is A.J. Brown, the coverage on A.J. Brown when he got the touchdown. That's specifically what I was referring to.
Well, by that point
was garbage. Like, it was a first half touchdown, bro. It was still a first half.
But by that point it was already, because that was after the pick 6.
Okay, so keep in mind that I am very skewed by 28-3 because I lived that, and we can go into all of the reasons that Brady came back. Some of it being mistakes by the Falcons, right? But the point of it being mistakes can happen, and at halftime or prior to halftime, it is still a game. And so I really thought that the coverage on A.J. Brown, that time that he got the touchdown, left a lot to be desired. And that was one of the plays where I think doubling him and moving McDuffie to Devontae Smith would have worked. Also, similarly on the touchdown that Devontae Smith got, I felt like the wrong defender was on Devontae Smith when he broke it. And they did that play action. So those are my 2 nitpicks. I don't think.
So wait a minute. No. So just to your point, I just want to illustrate. I understand you are myopic on this.
Good.
So when A.J. Brown scored a touchdown, it was already 17-0. When Devontae Smith scored a touchdown, it was 27-0.
Yep.
So the game is over.
So 17-0.
Your point is moot.
I'm sorry. 17-0, the game's not over.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what. If you were down 17-0 against the Giants, were y'all winning that game? No.
So
Atlanta, comparing 17-0 with the Atlanta Falcons defensive line and defense in that game versus 17-0 against this defense is comparing Shaq to Kevin Hart.
So. All right.
We've seen what happens to Brady when he gets pressure up the middle with 4.
I get where you're coming from, but what I would say is that when you have enough, let me put it this way. I thought that on defense and with Spags, if they had called a better coverage on A.J. Brown, it still would have been 17-0, maybe 20-0, which is still a game at halftime. I'm sorry,
bro. It's not.
As a graduate from 28-3,
aren't you? You're also aren't you?
So,
part of what you're not saying, right? I think. Tell me if I'm wrong here. It's what you're saying, but it's also like 17 or 20 at the half with somebody with Mahomes' record of comebacks and the way that he plays. is within reason. I
And
think is
to
part of
just
what you're
clarify
pointing.
that, what I mean by that is,
No,
hypothetically, your QB
it's 10-17.
threw an interception,
it's not.
and now the
Okay.
opposing team
But
And you're going up
is
against the
field
number
goal
one
range.
of the
Your
top
job as a
rushing
defense
offenses
is to
in the
hold them to field
NFL.
goal.
So
That's just-
unlike
you know what it
the
is.
Falcons, which is
Um,
why
hold
Dan
on,
Quinn
they
got
did that.
fired. He
Right,
threw an
Eagles
interception.
won the ball. Right.
So,
They
stopped before field
they
goal.
wouldn't
have enough time to come
But
back. He threw a pick six. The defense can't. Spags still have a play call.
So just to be
stop
clear,
pick six.
I think anytime you lose,
but
there's
if I
enough
remember
blame on multiple
but wait a minute.
sides of the
But
ball to go
if
around.
AJ Brown would double covered in that
I
pick
think
six,
in
it
this
might not have
case,
hurt. Come on,
the
bro.
majority of the blame
where I
goes
was going
to
with this is
the Chiefs' decisions on
the
offense.
pick six made it
whether we're talking about
17
players
nothing or
And that was the
coaching.
game. That was game.
But I
Set, match
also
right there.
think that
Wait,
there
the pick
are a
six made
handful
17
of plays
right?
where Spags
Yes.
could have used his
Okay.
defenders
And
better
so the AJ
to
Brown
stop
happened
the
after
bleeding.
now. The AJ Brown,
Yes, the AJ Brown was a touchdown after that.
Right. And so I'm saying the touchdown after that, I think, was also after a turnover, right? Like, was it was that the fumble or was that the pick? Because Mahomes had 2 picks and a fumble, if I remember.
Yeah, that was after the I think that was after the was it Braun or Bond? The linebacker?
Yeah. So Bond had a pick. Yes. So that's what I'm saying. So that it was an additional pick. And what I'm
right. And again, that's not on Spags.
No, what I was saying is I believe in that situation. Did you see, number one, who the defender was and how far away he was on that AJ Brown touchdown? Like fair or not, it was clearly a busted coverage. Now,
hey,
we could say, fuck it, you were
just shooting the corpse after it's dead, man.
But I think the point is, you got in the first half, you still got to try to compete, and you still got to try to put your players in the best position, even if you're down 17-0. So that's where I was going with it. I'm not saying that if they played double coverage on AJ Brown, somehow they get the pick and then the Chiefs rally. That's not what my argument is. But my argument is that coverage, whatever the hell Spags was trying to do on that particular play after the sudden change, after the Bond interception, was not the fuck it. I'm sorry. That was just a horrible coverage to leave AJ Brown, arguably one of the top 5 receivers in the league, out, and I think it was like a slow linebacker was the closest person under him. You got to have that double coverage on AJ Brown because they're going to go. Typically, you get a bomb. You go for the bomb if you got that big intercept. You going for the kill shot like they did with Devontae Smith. So that was my only critique on Spags. I think Spags did a great job stopping Saquon. Shout out to him for frustrating the running game. I've never seen Saquon that tentative. I was impressed by that. But once you get it into obvious third down passing situations, it's okay to call better coverages than whatever that mess was on AJ Brown. That's all I'm saying.